What if I told you that Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu's recent trip to South Africa was not just about medical treatment or family visits, but something far more shocking? Reports now suggest the journey was deliberately concealed, raising questions about the Lungu case in court, hidden deals, and a network of secrets that could change everything. Why was the Lungu family so determined to keep this trip away from the public eye? And what does this mean for his legal battles back home? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Zambia's politics. Edgar Lungu's secret trip to South Africa has left Zambia asking tough questions. Why was this journey kept hidden from the public? Was it connected to the ongoing Lungu case in court? Or does it expose a deeper political strategy by the Lungu family? In this video, we uncover the real reason Lungu's South Africa trip was concealed, the hidden connection to his court cases, the role of the Lungu family in Zambia's ongoing political drama, what this means for the future of Zambia and President Hichilema's government. This is more than a trip, it's a scandal that could shake Zambia's political landscape. The hidden departure. It began in silence. No public announcement, no cameras at the airport, no cheerful send-off. Former President Edgar Lungu's departure from Zambia was not the grand exit of a statesman. It was the quiet slipping away of a man with something to hide. The whispers say it started late at night. A convoy of black vehicles leaving Lusaka under the cover of darkness. No flashing lights, no sirens. Just shadows moving quickly through empty roads. Where were they going? And why the secrecy? For weeks afterward, Zambians asked the same question. Why had the trip to South Africa been kept secret? For a man of Lungu's stature, international travel usually made headlines. Even his opponents expected transparency. But this time, nothing. Not a word until much later, when fragments of the truth began to leak. Some say it was about health. That Lungu, long rumored to be struggling, had flown to South Africa for urgent medical attention. But if that were true, why not admit it? Others argue it was politics. That the trip was less about medicine and more about meetings. Hidden negotiations with powerful figures in Pretoria. But there's a third theory, one that chills those who hear it. That the trip wasn't about health or politics, but money. A covert mission to move fortunes across borders before investigators could close in. If that's true, then the hidden departure wasn't just secrecy, it was survival. What's more, very few people inside Zambia's government knew of the journey. Even some of Lungu's closest allies claimed they were left in the dark. So who authorized the trip? Who arranged the planes, the escorts, the silence? And more importantly, who stood to benefit from hiding it? The secrecy worked for a while. Days passed, then weeks. But eventually, cracks began to show. A slip of the tongue here, a leaked document there. Slowly, the story of the hidden departure made its way into Lusaka's corridors of power. And when it did, the question changed. It was no longer, why did Lungu leave? It became, what did he bring back with him? Because sometimes the most dangerous part of a journey is not the leaving, but the returning. The shadow deal. Every secret journey has a destination. And for Edgar Lungu, the hidden trip to South Africa led not just to quiet hospitals or empty hotel rooms, but to the corridors of power in Pretoria. The whispers began almost immediately. Rumors of closed-door meetings with wealthy businessmen, former intelligence chiefs, and even politicians who had reasons to keep their encounters hidden. But the biggest question remained, what was being discussed behind those doors? Some insiders claim it was all about protection. That Lungu, aware of the mounting legal and financial pressure back home, was seeking guarantees. Guarantees that his fortune, and perhaps even his freedom, could be shielded from the storm gathering in Zambia. But others believe something far bigger was in play. That the former president was building alliances beyond his country's borders. That this wasn't just a trip for comfort, it was a negotiation for power. If that theory is true, then South Africa wasn't just a safe haven. It was a bargaining table. What makes this story even stranger is Pretoria's silence. South African officials have refused to confirm the meetings. No photos, no press releases, no acknowledgements. But silence can be louder than words. Why protect Lungu's secrecy, unless the conversations held behind those walls carried risks too big to expose? And then, there's the matter of money. Financial records hinted at movements of large sums during Lungu's time in South Africa. Transfers routed through shell companies, luxury purchases that appeared suddenly, and accounts linked to names close to his circle. Could these transactions have been part of a deal struck in Pretoria? A deal that would ensure the survival of his wealth, no matter what happened in Zambia? Yet not all meetings were about business. Some whispered that intelligence officers shadowed Lungu's steps, ensuring he met the right people and avoided the wrong ones. Was Pretoria watching him closely, or protecting him quietly? The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't an ordinary trip. It was a mission cloaked in secrecy, shaped by interests that stretched across borders. A deal may have been struck in the shadows, one that could change not just the fate of the Lungu family, but Zambia's politics for years to come. But deals made in silence rarely stay hidden forever. And soon, the whispers of Pretoria would clash with the voices inside Lusaka. The guardians of silence. Every secret needs its keepers. For Edgar Lungu's hidden trip to South Africa, those keepers were not strangers, they were insiders. Loyal aides, trusted security officers, and family members who carried the weight of silence on their shoulders. They were the guardians of a secret that could not afford to be exposed. From the very beginning, the mission relied on discretion. The convoy that slipped through Lusaka's roads in the dead of night didn't just vanish on its own. It took planning. It took coordination. It took silence from people who knew more than they were ever allowed to admit. Some of these guardians were driven by loyalty. They had served Lungu for years, through power and scandal alike. To them, protecting his secrecy was an act of duty, perhaps even love. But others, their silence came at a price. Whispers suggest that money changed hands before the departure. Large sums paid to ensure loyalty, to guarantee that no detail of the trip would leak. If true, then silence wasn't just loyalty, it was currency. But here lies the danger. The more people who hold a secret, the harder it is to contain. And soon, cracks began to appear. An aide spotted at the wrong place. A driver whose story didn't match the official timeline. A slip of the tongue from someone who knew too much. Each small crack threatened to tear the cover wide open. The guardians of silence lived under pressure. Some feared exposure. Others feared betrayal from within their own circle. And yet, the secret held, for a time. What's more, not everyone inside Zambia's power structure was happy about being left in the dark. Some officials, cut out of the plan, began asking questions. Who authorized the trip? Who signed the documents? Why was the chain of command broken? That's when suspicion turned inward. Because if the guardians of silence had truly been loyal, why were leaks beginning to surface? Could it be that one of them, under pressure or temptation, had started feeding the truth to journalists and investigators? The guardians may have protected Lungu's trip, but their silence came at a heavy cost. Distrust spread like wildfire. Allies began turning on each other. And soon, the greatest threat to the secret wasn't exposure from the outside, it was betrayal from the inside. And that betrayal would take the story to a darker level. The South African connection. Every exile builds bridges. And for Edgar Lungu, South Africa was more than a temporary refuge. It was a stage for alliances that could outlast his fall from power. But who exactly did he meet there? And why did Pretoria choose silence? At first, the whispers sounded vague. Businessmen, lawyers, former intelligence chiefs. But the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. Lungu's trip was not only about secrecy, it was about strategy. South Africa has long been the hub for exiled leaders, political negotiations, and financial deals too sensitive for public eyes. For Lungu, Pretoria offered cover. It was close enough to home to feel familiar, yet far enough to escape the daily scrutiny of Lusaka. Some reports claim he met with businessmen tied to mining and construction, industries where fortunes can vanish into hidden accounts. Others suggest his focus was political. Did he seek advice, or perhaps backing, from those who once shaped South Africa's own transitions of power? The truth remains shadowed, but every version carries weight. And then there was the question of money. During his stay, quiet financial movements were detected. Properties in Johannesburg allegedly linked to companies tied to his circle. Transfers routed through Cape Town, hidden behind layers of shell corporations. Was this the continuation of an old network, or the birth of a new one? Pretoria's silence only fueled the mystery. Unlike Lusaka, where rumors exploded daily, South African officials maintained strict discipline. No photos, no statements, no leaks. It was as though the trip never happened. Yet silence can often mean complicity. Did Pretoria protect Lungu out of diplomacy? Or were there shared interests in keeping certain secrets buried? One thing is clear: the South African connection gave Lungu room to maneuver, to negotiate, to prepare. Whether for legal battles, political survival, or the safeguarding of wealth, he found in Pretoria a shield that Zambia could not easily break. But every shield has its cracks. And the whispers inside Lusaka soon turned toward the people closest to Lungu. Those who had traveled with him. Those who had seen too much. Because sometimes, the truth of an empire's survival isn't found in the leaders' meetings, but in the silent testimonies of those standing just behind him. The bodyguard's secret. Every powerful man carries secrets. But sometimes, the people who guard him, those who stand closest, yet remain unseen, carry even more. And for Edgar Lungu's hidden trip to South Africa, one of those people may have been a bodyguard. For years, his security detail was his shadow. They knew his routines, his movements, his weaknesses. They were trained to protect him from threats on the outside. But in moments like this, they also became witnesses to the dangers within. Sources whisper that one particular guard traveled with Lungu during the secret South Africa trip. He was not just an escort, but a watcher. He saw who came and went. He knew which hotel rooms were visited, which meetings stretched into the night. He may even have known the code names used to disguise the mission. But here's the mystery. The bodyguard never spoke publicly. No statement, no leak, no confession. Yet rumors suggest that he carried a story too dangerous to reveal. Was it fear of retribution that kept him silent? Or was it loyalty, cemented by years of service? Some claim he witnessed exchanges, conversations that hinted at deals over money or power, or promises that could shift Zambia's future. Others whisper he knew the truth behind the missing millions tied to Lungu's name. And in Pretoria, where the shadows moved quietly, he was the one who stood close enough to see them all. But silence has its limits. Reports later hinted that the bodyguard confided in someone he trusted. A colleague, a friend, maybe even a journalist. If true, then fragments of his knowledge are already in circulation, disguised as speculation, but rooted in truth. The danger is this: once a bodyguard speaks, the shield of secrecy shatters. Because no one is closer to the leader than the one tasked to guard his life. And if that silence breaks, it can expose more than just movements. It can reveal motives. So what did the bodyguard really know? Did he hold the key to the hidden South African meetings? Did he understand why the trip was concealed from the Zambian people? And most importantly, did his secret make him a threat to the very man he swore to protect? The missing millions. Every secret journey leaves a trail. And for Edgar Lungu's hidden trip to South Africa, that trail wasn't only political, it was financial. Whispers of money moving quietly across borders. Millions gone, but no one daring to ask where. From the start, the timing raised suspicion. As investigations back home in Zambia grew louder, so did the rumors of hidden accounts. Then came the trip to Pretoria. Was it coincidence? Or was it a carefully planned mission to shield wealth from seizure? Sources close to the case suggest that large sums were transferred during this period. Not directly under Lungu's name, that would have been too obvious. Instead, through shell companies. Properties in Johannesburg. Accounts linked to businessmen with no visible ties to Zambia. Luxury cars purchased and registered under different identities. Each layer carefully designed to hide the hand behind the money. But here's the problem with secrets. The bigger they are, the harder they are to contain. Documents began surfacing. A leaked transfer record here, a suspicious property deed there. And every piece pointed back to the same question. Was Lungu using his South Africa trip to move fortunes beyond Zambia's reach? And then there was Joe Malangi, the former foreign minister, long rumored to be connected to financial dealings of this kind. Some allege he played a role in coordinating these movements, serving as both fixer and shield. But if that's true, where did the trust end and betrayal begin? Because whispers also suggest that not all of the money made its way back into Lungu's control. Somewhere along the trail, millions vanished. Was it siphoned by allies, lost in bad deals, or pocketed by those who saw the chaos as their chance to take? For the Zambian people, the missing millions became more than just rumor. It symbolized the corruption that had defined an era. But for the Lungu family, it was survival. Money wasn't just wealth, it was power. And losing it meant losing leverage, both in exile and at home. The unanswered question is this: did South Africa become a safe vault for hidden fortunes, or a trap where allies turned into rivals? Pretoria's silence. In politics, silence can speak louder than words. And in the case of Edgar Lungu's secret trip to South Africa, Pretoria's silence was deafening. No official confirmation. No press releases. No images of his arrival. For weeks, South African authorities acted as though the former Zambian president had never set foot in their country. But behind that silence lay a dangerous question. Was Pretoria complicit, or simply protecting itself? South Africa has a history of hosting exiled leaders, controversial figures, and hidden negotiations. From liberation fighters to ousted presidents, Pretoria has often played the quiet host. But with Lungu, the secrecy was absolute. Not a single public trace was allowed to slip. Why? Some argue it was diplomacy. That South Africa did not want to risk a diplomatic storm with Lusaka by openly admitting Lungu's presence. Others believe it was about business, that Pretoria's elites had too much to gain from keeping certain conversations hidden. And then, there's the theory of shared interests. If Lungu's trip involved moving money, striking deals, or negotiating protections, Pretoria may have stood to benefit. Protecting his silence could have meant protecting their own. But silence also creates suspicion. Back in Zambia, opposition figures demanded answers. Why was their former leader unaccounted for? Why was South Africa refusing to acknowledge what the whole region already whispered about? Each unanswered question fueled a fire that Pretoria could no longer ignore. Yet still, the silence held. And that silence raises a darker possibility, that Pretoria was not simply turning a blind eye, but actively shielding Lungu under agreements too sensitive to reveal. Agreements that may have stretched into intelligence networks, financial arrangements, or political promises. The truth is, silence is never free. Someone always pays the price. And in this case, the cost may have been trust. Between governments. Between allies. Between the people and their leaders. Because the longer Pretoria stayed quiet, the more the mystery grew. And with every day of silence, the legend of Lungu's secret trip deepened. But even the strongest silence cannot hold forever. Eventually, the truth would begin to crack open, not through governments, but through individuals. The secret unraveled. Every secret has a breaking point. And for Edgar Lungu's hidden trip to South Africa, that breaking point came not with an announcement, but with a leak. It began with documents. Flight records showing unusual movements between Lusaka and Pretoria. Bank transfers routed through companies no one had ever heard of. Property deeds linking South African addresses to names suspiciously close to the Lungu circle. Each fragment alone looked ordinary. But when pieced together, the picture was undeniable. The secret trip was real. And it was never meant to be known. Then came the testimonies. Quiet whispers from those who had traveled with him. A driver who remembered late-night movements. A hotel worker who recalled extra security. And a guard who may have seen more than he ever should have. Their voices, once silenced by loyalty or fear, began to surface. And with them came the cracks that Pretoria's silence could no longer hide. But the revelations raised even darker questions. If money had been moved, where was it now? If deals had been struck, who stood to benefit? And if betrayal had occurred within his inner circle, was that betrayal the reason millions went missing? For the Lungu family, the unraveling was devastating. What began as whispers in Lusaka grew into headlines across the region. What was meant to remain hidden became a saga of secrecy, money, and mistrust. And for Zambia, the consequences were even larger. The scandal painted a portrait of leadership cloaked in deception, where the lines between politics, survival, and betrayal blurred beyond recognition. Yet even as the truth surfaced, one final mystery remained. How much of the real story was still buried? Were the documents genuine or planted? Were the testimonies full accounts, or fragments of a deeper conspiracy. Because sometimes, when secrets unravel, what's revealed is not the whole truth, but just enough to shift the story. The hidden trip to South Africa was no longer just a question of where Lungu went, or why. It became a mirror reflecting the shadows of Zambia's politics. Shadows that still linger, waiting for the next revelation. This may be the end of this chapter, but the story is far from over.